Hey, what's up you guys? Bloody Jacob here to bring you another action QMR, and this time we're going to be talking about a slew of films including Olympus Has Fallen, released in 2013, along with the Steven Seagal sequel, Under Siege 2, Dark Territory, released in 1995, along with Avenging Force, starring Michael Dudikoff, released in 86, and finally, The Last Warrior, or also known as The Last Patrol, starring Dolph Lundgren, which came out in 2000.
Jacob here, meeting my icon, Catherine Isabel here.
Yeah, kicking things off with Olympus Has Fallen. This is a movie I held off on watching for a while. I'm not exactly sure why. I mean, I don't know, I guess I just thought it'd be another sort of generic, type of modern day action movie. But I finally watched it on Netflix. I've always liked Gerard Butler. I mean, I'm sure I've probably seen like an ad for the new one, Angel, has come out or something. But I've always liked Gerard Butler, even in things like Dracula 2000. I bet most of you don't even know he actually played Dracula in the movie. I actually had seen that on TV quite a bit when I was younger. And the movie isn't very good. But he's not the worst Dracula I ever seen, even at that point in his career. And he kind of unnerved me, when I was younger too, so that's got to count for something. Christopher Plummer also had a role in that. I even liked Bounty Hunter with him and Jennifer Aniston. Of course he's been in tons of other movies over the years, and I definitely got to see more of him. Of course, Law Abiding Citizen, which is a movie I should talk about more on this channel. At some point, with Jamie Foxx, is quite a good sort of crime thriller as well. But yeah, Olympus Has Fallen. It's about a disgraced Secret Service agent and former presidential guard Mike Banning, who finds himself trapped inside the White House in the wake of a terrorist attack. Using his inside knowledge, Banning works with national security to rescue the president from his captors. And yeah, I actually really enjoyed this movie a lot more than I expected. It was directed by Antoine Fuqua. I probably butchered the hell out of his name there. But he's actually a pretty reputable director. He directed the Equalizer films recently. He directed Training Day, The Magnificent Seven, the 2016 movie, which I liked, among a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, a pretty good director they had attached to it. Morgan Freeman isn't in it a whole lot. He's more of a speaker of the White House, but his role is key, and Morgan Freeman isn't a bad presence to have in any movie for obvious reasons. I also really liked Aaron Eckhart as the president. Very strong choice. I believe in honor the guy is supposed to have, even though he played Two-Face in another movie, right? But yeah, I really enjoyed Olympus Has Fallen. It came out at a time when a lot of these movies were coming out for some reason. I also had White House Down the same year with, crap, I can't remember his name now, Channing Tatum, Magic Mike, and Jamie Foxx, ironically. And I don't think I'm going to be watching that movie anytime soon. You have Channing Tatum running around in a white sleeveless shirt most of the time, from what I've seen. And Magic Mike isn't as believable as Gerard Butler, who actually gives a very good and believable performance in this movie. I was really impressed by him, and it makes me want to watch more of him again. he handles the action well. You believe him and the training he has and the conviction he has and his demeanor and everything. But there's a couple scenes throughout where you get to see more of a, I don't know if I want to say vulnerable side to him, but more of a real side to him. He has this conversation with his wife, who's played by Radha Mitchell, who I always like, in the middle of it all, which I think is one of the best scenes in the movie. And then there's another, where it's set up for why he's not serving the president in the beginning, and it's pretty good. And the action itself, I really liked. It's a lot of obvious, of course, machine gun fire. It's not like a martial arts movie or anything, but when it starts, it really, really, really does not let up. It's pretty rare when there's a break in it. They didn't actually get to film in DC, unfortunately, so you do see some CG backgrounds, especially in the beginning, but it still really engaged me at the early start of the film when the assault on the White House happens. I still thought it was quite cool to watch from a visual standpoint. There's just some shots of planes and such near that first part of it that are a little bit off, but you can easily get past it and you've easily seen worse. And also, I'm pretty sure there is a sci-fi or an asylum studio movie they did on this kind of thing as well at the time. They probably did. They pretty much parody every big movie every year, so. But yeah, I really liked Olympus Has Fallen. I gave it a 9 out of 10 on IMDb. I'm giving it at least a 90% on here. Really regret not seeing it sooner. I'm not sure how it'll follow it up with London Has Fallen, but I'm eager to see Angel eventually. But yeah, let me guys talk about Olympus Has Fallen. Next up, we're going to be talking about, yes, changing gears here, Under Siege 2, Casey motherfucking Ryback, with Steven Seagal. So it's about Casey Ryback, who hops on a Colorado to LA train to start a vacation with his niece. Early into the trip, terrorists board the train and use it as a mobile HQ to hijack a top-secret destructive U.S. satellite. And right there brings a little gripe of mine that I'd like to talk about. I feel like the film sort of went for a bigger angle than it really had to. I think they could have just stuck to criminals on the train. They didn't have to introduce this whole sort of satellite element to the story, almost kind of bridging on sci-fi with what they incorporate into it with it. But that's not the least of the film's problems, I guess. Yeah, Under Siege. I like the first Under Siege fine. I've had a very weird relationship with Steven Seagal over the past month or so. I did like Marked for Death for the most part, as well as Out for Justice. Both of those alright. I did not care for On Deadly Ground. And here it continued. And I wasn't even overly excited about the first Under Siege when I had seen it, but I warmed up to it a little bit. But again, it kind of continues the trend of Steven Seagal never really having fight scenes because he never faces any difficulty, any opposition, any struggle, any sort of engagement that would get us to root for the character because he's a machine and he barely ever gets hurt. And that kind of continues here. Well, Katherine Heigl is in it, which is one good thing, as his niece Sarah. Apparently they eventually did have some issues on set, though. They look all friendly with each other on the, the press photos you see and such. Sorry about that. But I think Katherine Heigl had spoken sometime later about how Seagal kind of sexually harassed her, tried to get her into a scenario that she was really not, wanting or reciprocating. So I would not be surprised by that. There have been a lot of cases about Seagal that have come up over the years now. So that's unfortunate. But Katherine Heigl is still probably the high point here, honestly. She's not given a whole lot to do. But you can tell there's more life and sort of vibrancy to her performance than anyone else in the movie. There's also a young Morris Chestnut in this movie as one of the employees on the train. And you kind of feel like he's a token character. It feels kind of forced in that way. I don't know. But he's still a good presence in it. He sort of also works as the comedic relief to Steven Seagal. He doesn't know how to use the gun, but he's really eager to help, and he kind of has a thing for, Katherine Heigl, so it works kind of well, and he's in the movie more frequently than I thought. Again, kind of giving Casey motherfucking Ryback a partner, like the stripper in the first one. But the train shots did not look bad. I mean, it's not like Derailed, where it looks completely either green screen or like old school western screen literally in the background moving around. And I did not mind Derailed either, mostly because it's the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. Jean-Claude could outperform Seagal in anything, any day. But in terms of overall production, you can tell Under Siege 2 is probably a bit better from like a general standpoint, unfortunately. And Seagal gives a fine performance, and pretty much a staple of what you'd expect from him. Not good, not necessarily terrible, just, he's there. He's probably best at the beginning of the movie when he's getting a drink and trying to make a connection with his niece. Throughout the rest of it, it's kind of just one-liners, just sort of blank, tough stares and such. What more can you think going into it? The bad guys, I guess they tried to get quite a few notable actors to play the role of Travis Stane, but they eventually got Eric Bogosian. I'm sorry, I'm bad with the names apparently. But he's actually not bad. He's an over-the-top sort of, typical unstable villain who's going for the satellite ploy. He's not too bad. You have Everett McGill as Marcus Penn, who's supposed to be built up as Ryback's main physical opposition, the one sort of controlling the operations of the actual, train. But again, it's like the Tommy Lee Jones fight in Under Siege. It's like the fight in any other movie he has. Like, I was surprised with Mark for Death, which again I kind of liked, that Seagal actually got hit a couple times and was actually slammed a couple times, at least against the wall or whatever, but that's the most I've ever seen. When it actually comes down to the fight, it doesn't even look like it's, an issue. It doesn't even look like he's struggling or actually putting any effort into it. He just does it, and yeah, they fall down a couple, steps, within the train, but and then Seagal, I thought, got shot once in the arm, but it turned out he didn't get shot at all, and he is basically holding on to the very bottom of the train, and he stinks up on the bad guys again later. But anyway, the fight with Marcus Penn, it's fine, it kind of brings back the little knife duel that he did with Tommy Lee Jones. I guess they would have to do that in every Under Siege movie now, and it's fine, but they could have made that fight so much more. I mean, Everett McGill was, at first, initially a decent, somewhat imposing bad guy, but again, when they get to the fight, they don't really do much with that. It's not even a fight. Like any big Seagal fight in a movie is usually just a beatdown of some kind, so I don't know. If it delivered more on that end, I probably would have liked this movie more. And even then, I did not mind it in comparison to some of his other films that I've seen lately. I think it's a lot better than On Deadly Ground. It's not a terrible sequel to the first Under Siege either, honestly. If you're a fan of it, I think it's a competent follow-up. But still, I'm not 100% crazy about it either, don't get me wrong. I'm getting about middle of the road, about a C, 74-75%, which some might think is generous, but I think it's within that solid crop of Seagal films, if you like them at all. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that before I ran about it for another 30 minutes for some reason. Next up, we're going to be talking about Avenging Force, starring Michael Dudikoff, which came out in '86. And it's about a senator who is targeted by the Pentangle, a right-wing paramilitary group. His pal, former CIA agent and martial artist, tries to help him. The group kidnaps the agent's sister and tries to hunt him down, the most dangerous game style. And yeah, I was pretty eager to see this movie. My brother, he's been very insistent on me checking out the works of Michael Dudikoff, as well as Jeff Speakman and some others. And out of those, sort of actors, along with David Bradley, Gary Daniels, from what I've seen anyway so far and tried to watch, Michael Dudikoff seems to be the best of them from an acting standpoint. Not that he's great, but he tries to literally feel sort of like an old school action star. Right away when I watched this, I wanted to see him in a western. It turned out he did do one called Deadly Shooter, which I may watch sometime. But this was actually originally intended to be a sequel to Chuck Norris's Invasion USA. But I guess Norris was uninterested in it, so they eventually kind of reworked it and to sort of stand on its own. Even though Dudikoff's character does share the same name with Norris's character in Invasion USA. But yeah, you can tell this is similar to other action movies like Hard Target with Van Damme, for example, and there have been other movies that use this sort of, a group of criminals basically trying to hunt down, some sort of victim, but yet they turn out to be very capable themselves and such. But yeah, it's about Dudikoff's character returning, and he eventually tries to help his friend, played by Steve James within the town, where there's a lot of racial tension basically, and a lot of skewed views like the synopsis talked about there. And Steve James is a likable presence. They had worked together in the American Ninja movies, which I should see at some point. I almost wanted more Steve James in this movie because he and Dudikoff do have some good chemistry, and you believe they're friends. There's a little sister of Dudikoff's character in this movie that comes off really odd because she's heavily dubbed. I don't know if the actress is just that hard to understand with her lines in the movie or what, but it's a little awkward. And the film does take quite a dark turn with the actions of this group of people against our lead characters within the film. That I was a little surprised by they went as far as they did with. Makes it a little bit dreary, but maybe all the more eager for you to see Dudikoff's character actually fight back and hopefully eventually defeat and kill them in the game they're trying to commence. So it's not bad. I mean, I was expecting more martial arts going into it, but I haven't seen much of Dudikoff, and as my brother told me, he's not one to necessarily go all out with that, even though he is capable of it. And he does throw a couple strong kicks in this, but how they basically use his fighting style in this is it's a bit more of a rugged sort of brawling survival mode type of thing, which I think kind of fit. And the fight scenes and confrontations we do get in the woods and the swamp area in particular are still entertaining. Again, you kind of feel the guy's desperation and everything, and again, out of those group of actors, from what I've seen, I think Dudikoff can show the most expression and a smidgen of emotion that I kind of liked, and made him a bit endearing in this movie, and I was rooting for him. When he gets a hold of the crossbow thing, it's cool, and he has a sort of sword fight and kind of stick duel with a particular killer in this movie. That was probably the best part of it. And when he confronts the main guy at the end, played by, I think it's James Booth or wait, no, John P. Ryan. I don't know. I'm getting the names mixed up here, but there's a scene near the end where they're in the family's fancy mansion, and then he uses a lot of antique shields and stuff like that. It's very V movie-ish, very campy, but I think they're aware of the kind of movie they're going for, so it's hard to take it away when they're honed in on being the kind of movie they're making. Sorry, random voice crack. I didn't think this was a bad time. I was actually pretty hyped after watching it. I even made my girlfriend watch a couple bits of it. I've kind of cooled down on it since. I mean, I think it was, I think it's one I'll watch again before something like Under Siege 2. And again, Dudikoff, he gets his ass kicked in this movie. He faces opposition, there's suspense. He's going to win. It's, the kind of movie it is, but, it's not like, it looks like more than an inconvenience for him to fight these guys, But, yeah, so I liked it. I would have liked a sequel to it. They had set it up at the end of the movie, but I guess Canon just never went through with it, or they had run out of time by the time they were planning on it. I'm not sure when they went for those Masters of the Universe sequels and the Spider-Man movie they attempted. I'm not sure. But yeah, I like this one. I'm giving it probably between a 77 or maybe even as high as an 80% on the right day. I don't know what you guys thought about it. Where does it rank among your favorite Dudikoff movies? And again, I haven't seen all of them yet, so I can't really rank them specifically. But yeah. And last off, we're going to be talking about The Last Warrior, starring Dolph Lundgren, which came out in 2000, also known as The Last Patrol, it seems more frequently, but this is the title of it they had on Tubi, which is where I watched it, and it's also the only way to get the DVD in the U.S., where it's called The Last Warrior. And it's about a massive earthquake that destroys Los Angeles, where a new order is formed. But after a disagreement among the ranks leads to more war and disruption, the last patrol must bring order if there's to be any hope for the future. So yeah, it's basically Dolph Lundgren leading this outpost, a couple soldiers, they're basically scavenging, trying to find some form of water, food, supplies. You have a couple kind of more erratic, colorful characters within the camp, I guess. Some people can't really fend for themselves as well. And of course, Dolph Lundgren is Captain Nick Preston within the movie. Has a bit of a trauma in his past. He's also trying to seek people out, that he had seen just before the disaster that he's hoping are still alive, which are kind of motivating him to go forward. And right off the bat, someone else I was kind of impressed by, besides Lundgren, she's definitely my favorite character in the movie, and that was Sarah McBride, played by Sherry Alexander, who hasn't done much at all. I mean, her last movie was, I don't know, not too long after this one. I mean, I'd have to look for it again, but yeah, I guess she was in an episode of Sex and the City, then she did Last Patrol, and then one called Layover. I don't know, she felt like, when I seen her, I thought, wait, I've seen her before, but I guess I haven't. But she gave a really, nice performance. I liked her and Dolph's scenes together. They sort of have a building bond as it goes, and she has something like outside the camp that's sort of motivating her as well. So they sort of butt heads, but you can tell they both really respect each other, that kind of thing. So I liked her in the movie quite well as well. You have Joe Michael Burke, who played Lucky. Sort of Dolph's right hand, the only other guy you can sort of rely on within the camp. He was fine as well, but the two of them, Dolph Lundgren and Sherry Alexander, are definitely the best and standouts in the movie. I did really like the premise for this, which is why I gave it a shot. I'd never seen it really brought up, which kind of makes you nervous, but you're also kind of eager to check out these things for yourself and maybe find one that you really liked but others didn't. It had one thing going for it. It was directed by Sheldon Littich, who directed some of the very best Van Damme films, and also had in writing them, like Bloodsport, Double Impact, and a bunch of others. So Dolph and him working together, feels like a recipe for success within the genre. Unfortunately, it wasn't as good as it could have been. I do like the premise, I do like the environment, the setting, it's unique. It's definitely kind of touching on a genre I could really get into. Well, unfortunately, even as IMDb says, Dolph and Sheldon, they did collide with the writers on this, who were also the co-producers. So before they signed on, they had gotten an agreement that they'd be able to rewrite the script as they needed. Maybe they would have added more action to it, something more dynamic, I'm not sure. But once they signed on, the writers, again, who are also the co-producers, didn't let them. So they're basically forced into this, and thus not very eager, in the proceedings. But Dolph, he still gave a good performance. You can tell he's, trying, and he has his, kind of trademark charm, and, smiles to him and everything. And I don't know, it just felt like there could have been more to the movie that Dolph Lundgren and Sheldon would have added had they had control of that. It's shot fairly well, and, the desert looks fine. I like their kind of mini shanty town they kind of have built around the camp. There's like a party scene they have where you feel like the characters are actually characters, and they kind of enjoy that as well. And there's this other group out there that they eventually face, this kind of ringleader in particular, that looked like he was chosen specifically how he was built, to maybe oppose Dolph Lundgren in a fight, but there's not much of a fight in this movie. Eventually they're put in a bad position, and Dolph eventually breaks out, and there's some punches thrown, a couple toss rounds and such, but there's not really much of a fight in this. But the shootout at the end is decent, and there's a good explosion, sort of like a hospital self-sacrificial thing, and it works moderately well. The music in this I also remember not minding. But so yeah, it wasn't a totally bad movie. There's a good payoff at the end. The story gives you more satisfaction than you might expect if you were at all invested in it. It's one I'll probably order on DVD at some point. I think it could have sparked a hell of a lot more. Which, again, apparently they are very aware of as well. But I think I do like him more than some of the other 2000s Dolph movies. I won't say it's one of my favorites, but I think there have been more Dolph films that Lundgren is unfortunately involved in. And this isn't necessarily one of them, although it does feel a bit tedious at times. The premise still kind of kept me going, and again, the chemistry with Dolph and Sherry Alexander I liked. So yeah, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, like, subscribe, and if I had to rate this one, I don't know, I'm putting it a couple notches above Under Siege 2 at least. which was, I think I said like a 74 or 75. So I'm giving this one like a 76, 77%, just kind of around Avenging Force, maybe somewhere in the middle, who knows. But yeah, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, like, subscribe. I already said that, so I'll catch you guys next time, and peace.